Today, with the first pick, we're looking at our favorite draft prospects ahead of the 2025 college season, which by my count, Ran, is 5 days from now. So we've already knocked out summer scouting. We've run through a couple of way too early mock drafts. And next week, we'll take a peek at my preseason big board. I know Ran can't wait to rip that thing apart. But today, I'm going to highlight 5 players we're excited to see over the next few months here in the college football season. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's former Titans GM Ran Carthon. This is episode 289. And Ran, because I know you're dying to know, there are 246 days until the 2026 NFL draft in Pittsburgh, PA. And by the way, you look like you're ready to work in the SID department of the Florida Gators. You got your uniform on. I'm going to shout out my new favorite college, St. Lawrence, and I got a sweatshirt. What do you think of that, Ran?
Hey, man, you should. You're going to be paying a lot of money to St. Lawrence coming up. And congrats to you and your wife and your family on your son enrolling and you guys getting him off to school. I'm pretty sure you cried in the car, but
I was celebrating and dancing like you've never. Oh, look at this!
And surprise! How about this? Yeah,
striking 3 right under the bus. Oh man! So that's my son. My son getting his dorm room set up, and you know what, Rand? This is going to be fun for us because his roommate in St. Lawrence's Division III college, his roommate plays football, so his roommate's been there for a while. So we'll have to follow the St. Lawrence Saints in the fall, see how they do D3 wise. Maybe we'll get you up here for a game when they have a pep rally for me. How about that?
Get your son's roommate some love. Get his name out there in draft circles a little bit.
So this will be fun. It'll be fun for the both of us. You've had kids in college. You got kids that are 8 and 7 years old that are dominating flag football. So you can be my guiding light as we go through this journey together. In the meantime, let's talk some college players. And so these are the 5 guys we're most excited to talk about. It doesn't mean the guys that are going to get drafted first, second, third overall, maybe not necessarily always going to be first-round picks, but guys that we think have a chance to improve their draft stock as we get through the college football season, and guys who may be at the top and we want to see if they stay at the top. Because a year ago, we were talking about a guy like Carson Beck, who is no longer, not only is he not quarterback 1, he might be quarterback 10, depending on who you ask. So before we look ahead, let's look back last year, 12 months ago, producer Sharon, at what Rick Spielman, my buddy, before he left to go to the Jets, and I, what we had as our favorite draft favorite draft prospects in this episode 12 months ago. And so Rick went Mason and Colston, Mason Graham, Colston Loveland, both out of Michigan, both first-round picks. The Browns traded down to 5 to get Mason, and then, of course, the Bears took Colston. Connor Wegman is an example, Ran, of a name who a lot of folks were high on. I had him as a late day 2, early day 3 pick 12 months ago. I wanted to see more. He ended up getting injured, benched, and he has since transferred from A&M to now Houston, where he'll be the quarterback. Your guy, Danny Stutzman, made this list out of Oklahoma, the linebacker, who was a day 3 pick. And then Denzel Burke, who there was some first-round buzz, the cornerback out of Ohio State. He ended up going on day 3 as well. But they're both, Danny and Denzel, going to make the roster and going to have a chance to contribute. And that was Rick's list. My list, Will Johnson. He was the number 1 player in my big board 12 months ago at cornerback. Cornerback has never been drafted first overall. Will ended up going to the second round. He's going to start for the Cardinals. Travis Hunter, layup. I mean, we just want to see what that looked like on both sides of the ball, and we're going to find out in Jacksonville. Ted McMillan, could he maintain his status as wide receiver 1? And he was wide receiver 1 if you're not including Travis. Cameron Ward, because, and you know this better than I do, Rand, there were day 3 conversations about Cameron a year and a half, 2 years ago. Now he's first overall. And then my guy, Charles Grant of the College William Mary, went 99th overall to the Raiders. And insane athleticism, insanely long arms, left tackle. He has struggled in the the preseason and training camp. Not a huge surprise. He has not played a lot of football, and he played FCS, and that acclimation process might take a little time. All in all, though, what do you think of this list here for both me and our buddy Rick?
Nah, I think if you want to say who had the better list, I have to go with you on this one. I think you won that one, so kudos to you. But shout out to Rick for having my guy Danny Stutzman on there. Danny Stutzman is just a good football player. You could tear him down, you could say what he can't do, but all I know is this guy makes a ton of tackles and he's always available. So good job by both. Denzel Burke, you saw that name a lot in a lot of early lists. Starting last year, but he kind of had a down year. So we'll see how he fares coming out of this preseason, heading into the first week of the regular season.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see 12 months from now how our guys look that we're about to talk about here on this list. And 12 months from now, we'll see where I'm at in terms of I don't want to say this. I'll let you know. I'm going to get some hair implants. 12 months from now, we'll see where I'm at. So I'm gonna look like
No,
Rand.
if you come with some hair implants, you guys think me and Sharon have jokes off air. These will become on air jokes if you come in. Yeah, if you just don't go to Turkey. I'll say that. For those out there that know, don't go to Turkey. Turkey is where everyone goes to get their hair implants. Don't ask me how I know that.
They'll pick you up at the airport. They'll pick you up at the airport. They'll put you in a nice hotel. I'm just saying. All right, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. All right, let's talk about the guys we're most excited to see on this list for this year. And you and I had the same quarterback, but then I switched at the last minute because this is a guy we haven't yet talked about, and I want to talk about him before the season gets going, just so I can be on record. But first things first, you had Fernando Mendoza, our guy from Cal, who's now at Indiana, and we talked about him during summer scouting. He's my QB4 if you include Arch. He's QB3 if you don't include Arch, and we can talk about Arch at some point in the future. But tell me what you want to see from Fernando coming from Cal, where the offensive line was, as you put it, suspect at best, going to a program that has a history in recent years of getting the most out of their QBs.
Yeah, man. For one, to start, I didn't know much about him until you and I had a conversation, and you put him on my radar. And if you remember, I called you immediately after watching him. Just excited about him. You're talking about a guy that has accuracy. He just has poise. He just has a natural feel, a natural instinct that I don't think most young guys have. And so him transferring over to Indiana, you'd like to see him just continue that. Be able to continue to play strong. And like I said, I think the offensive line in Indiana will be significantly better than what he had at Cal, where he was constantly under duress, which was a good thing for him in a sense, because he got a chance to show his toughness from the pocket and his ability to stand in there through the face of pressure and still be able to get the ball off, get it accurately. And so you just want to see him continue to grow in that aspect. And, it's going to be tougher competition in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is going to be competitive this year. And you just want to see him continue to play with poise, continue to play with toughness, accuracy, anticipation. And those are all the things that I think that he will show. And trust me, this guy's going to rise up some people's draft boards because he just gets it. He just understands how to play the quarterback position.
Yeah, South Florida kid. I can't believe you didn't bring that up. That's usually the first thing you lead with. Somehow got out of Florida.
I was going to stall you. I was going to stall you guys out with that one because I think I've driven that point home. But shout out to Columbus High School.
There it is. But the other thing, and I've talked about this several times on the podcast with you, Tyler Shuck was the 40th overall pick a few months ago to the Saints. This is what, in terms of physical tool, size, athleticism, arm strength, all those things, this is what I thought Tyler Shuck was supposed to be in terms of the pre-draft type he was getting. We'll see if he ends up being a really good quarterback or something other than that. But I think Fernando Mendoza, if that's the starting point, that automatically means he's inside the top 40. And unless he, not to rain down on Carson Beck, but unless he has a Carson Beck type season, it's hard to imagine he falls outside of the top 40, number one. And number two, to your other point, he's probably going to be well inside the top 32. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, I think if he plays how he played last year at Cal, and he plays in this Indiana offense, and Coach Cignetti's done a good job of developing these quarterbacks, like you mentioned, I think this guy will go in the first round. I think he has that level of ability. And so we'll see. Obviously, it falls on him and how he approaches this year, but everything you've become to know about this kid says that he will continue to grow and progress.
And that's the other thing, because sometimes I like to say we have to squint to see what we want to see. And, Anthony Richardson might be an example of that. He only had a short starting experience at Florida, but you could squint and you saw a lot of really good stuff. And with Fernando, you don't have to squint. Like, it's right there in front of you. You've seen him do it. And that gives you at least a little more ease in terms of when you're making these decisions in draft rooms about you're going to hopefully get what you think you're going to get. And you don't have to do a lot of projecting about what that might look like. Which brings me to my guy. There's going to be a little projection with this guy, John Mateer, who was at Washington State last year. He's now at Oklahoma. And he was the first player I watched after we wrapped up the 2025 draft. And that was a wild ride. I know you are not a roller coaster guy, Ran. You would not have liked to watch the roller coaster that I went on with John Mateer. He was fun. I will say that. He's a sidearm delivery guy, and I kept coming back to parts Baker Mayfield, parts Gardner Minshew, and if you love Napoleon Dynamite, parts Uncle Rico, just in the manic way he plays at times. He throws to all three levels with that sidearm delivery, He can play off platform. He's pretty accurate to the second and third level. He'll step on some throws. He has a little juice in his arm, and he is going to be a firecracker for the Sooners. But the question is this. If you watch his turnover-worthy throws, Ran, there's a lot to be left to be desired. And you wonder, okay, let's be a little less reckless with the ball. His big-time throws, he has some of the best tape that I saw in 2024 in terms of the throws he can make down the field and that dynamism. So then it becomes, how do you balance that in this season and translate that when you get drafted? Because right now I had him as a early day 3, late day 2 guy. So he has to figure out that math in order to make that next step. So obviously you want to minimize the turnovers, but what are you looking for as an evaluator when you hear that scouting report?
Nah, man. I mean, for me, I kind of apply this to personal life in terms of raising children. You don't want to take away their stinger. You don't want to take away what makes them them, And so that's where, for me, and I'm looking at my notes, he reminded me of Baker Mayfield, like you said.
Okay, good. Because at least I got that one right.
Because I think he just has the it. He just has an it that I feel like the guys around him, they all buy into. Like you said, he was a fun watch. I don't think he lacks for confidence, and I think you see it and you feel it on tape.
Yes,
I think there's some developmental to be had there just in terms of mechanics. You talked about his sidearm delivery and everything because his lower body was all over the place in terms of throwing the ball. But, man, when you talk about a guy that just you just has that it. This is what Baker Mayfield had coming out. I just remember a scout going into the pro day for Baker Mayfield that year that he came out, and all they talked about was just how when Baker spoke, when Baker walked, like the guys around him at Oklahoma just followed. Whatever Baker wanted to do. And you kind of see some of that now, with Baker Mayfield. And so he was a guy that when I watched him, I was excited about. And if you look at my rankings list, I have an arrow up, on this guy because he could be just like his predecessor. He could be just like Cam and have, start at Washington State, go to another program, lift it up, and then, go much higher than what people are projecting him to go. Now, will he be the first overall pick? I don't see that happening. But I could easily see this guy being a day 2 pick.
All right. So the sky is the limit for John Mateer. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about him before the season started because a lot of people had asked about him. And to your point, a lot of excitement. You're not going to be bored watching John Mateer. So that was a lot of fun. All right. That's a great start. Going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll get to our next 2 players that we're most excited to see this 2025 season of college football right after this break. Rand's cutting up, doing something. What are you giggling about? Did you get the job at Florida?
Oh, nothing.
Okay.
I did. So, they just call you. You're trying to get me kicked off this podcast, man. That just lets me know where we are in our relationship.
Nah, no one is trying to see a podcast with just me. By the way, I'll tell you quickly, we did a post-draft show after the 2023 draft, and Rick was retired down in Florida at the time, and his internet went out. So the final 20 minutes of me on this show was just talking, doing a monologue. And I don't know what the ratings were, but I'm going to guess they didn't go up. So we need you is what I'm trying to say. All right. You took the lowest hanging fruit possible, but you are excited about this young man. You've already adopted him. You went out to Vegas and saw him and his brother over July 4th. So you guys have a relationship. And the person might be better than the player. Not saying something. Of course, I'm talking about Ohio State safety Caleb Downs, transfer from Alabama. People were like, oh, why would you do that? And he just played better last season. So tell me about Caleb and what does he need to do to change what is already feels like a top 10 pick?
I'll just say this, and I won't go down, too far of a rabbit hole with this kid. I think he has very few flaws in his game. He's just a really good, very instinctive football player. And as many plays as he makes on the field, a lot of what he does doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And then I'll just end it there. Now, what he'll need to do is he's going to have to run well. And what run well means is very subjective. I think he'll run in the low 4.5s. I'll give him 4.51 to 4.53, and I think if he runs that, he'll be fine. Some people will, have an issue with that speed. But if you look at the average speed of most safeties in the league, it's on par. So that's going to be the one thing that people are going to be concerned with, the true post-field range, red line to red line and the top end speed. But listen, as the great philosopher Ryan Wilson says, don't overthink it.
I mean, 2 words, Kyle Hamilton. 2 more words, Brian Branch. Bro, I don't care that you ran in the 4.5s. Just watch me play. And you talk about it all the time. You get the GPS data from the teams when they practice. You know how fast these kids are running. And if your eyeballs work, you can see how fast Caleb Downs runs when he's on the field in games making plays. So I'm with you. I feel like top 10 pick, even at safety, which is sometimes undervalued, quotation marks, seems certainly reasonable, doable. And if you went higher than that, than the 8 to 10 range, 12 range, I wouldn't be shocked either. All right, we've talked about Caleb before, so if you want to go hear more, you can check out the summer scouting on the defensive backs, or literally just Google how many times have Ryan and Rand talked about Caleb Downs, because it's going to come up a lot. We spent a lot of time this summer talking about him for good reason.
Yeah, all right. Next up, he's my little June bug. That's my June bug. That's my young boy.
He is your June bug. You didn't like his mom's spaghetti, but that's a different conversation.
Wow.
Got him, Sharon. Got him. That's not entirely true. If you want to hear that conversation, I would encourage you to go watch NFL and CBS YouTube interview with Ran and our buddy B-Mac, 2-time Super Bowl champ from the Steelers, and they talked to Josh Downs and his brother Caleb Downs, and they got into everything football and food. So that's a good listen, and you get an insight to who these young men are. All right, my guy, and this is an off-the-radar guy that, to bring up Bryant McFadden again, he put him on my radar late last fall. Rahsul Faison, who was a running back at Utah State at the time, he has since transferred to South Carolina, so he'll be in the same backfield with Lenore Sellers. And Rand, I'll ask you this. When I watched him, I was like, why are we not talking about this young man? And this was November, early December, and he was deciding whether to come out or whether to return to school or maybe transfer. He ended up transferring. And I talked to a couple scouts about him, and they both said, if you have an opportunity to transfer and get some NIL money, that's certainly more likely to be the best case scenario in the short term than to come out and potentially not get drafted. He's going to be 26 in February. So he's 25 and a half right now. Doesn't have a lot of mileage on the tires, that said. And he is going to have a chance to be a workhorse in that South Carolina backfield. He is twitchy, short area quicks. He hits the hole. He makes guys miss in small areas. He runs through arm tackles. He does a lot of things you want them to do. So knowing everything that I've told you about him, what do you need to see for him as someone who's going to be 26 in terms of getting themselves drafted in 246 days?
Well, I think first and foremost, he's just going to have to show that he can carry the load in the SEC. Very, very different from the Mountain West, or whatever the conferences are now. I can't even keep up. So he's going to have to show that he can carry the load. But then the 26 is just going to be an issue because as a rookie, he'll be turning 27. So, I mean, he's going to have to rush for something crazy for it to be, in my opinion, to go in those top 2 days. And I just don't know that will happen because it's just going to be tough to draft a potentially 27-year-old running back very high.
No, I understand that, and that's fair. And we've talked about Jeremiah Love and Nick Singleton and your guy CJ Baxter, who's coming off that injury last year. Le'Veon Moss are all guys that we talked about. Singleton's teammate at Penn State, Katron Allen. But do you think there's a chance that he gets drafted at all? Because the conversation I had with scouts late last year was he may go undrafted, and he was a year younger. Wasn't asked to do quite as much at Utah State, but his flashes were pretty impressive. So you can be 26 and still get drafted because, again, running backs a lot of times, probably historically, just guessing, probably typically have 1 year deal, one rookie deals, and that's it, 4 years, and then they figure things out. But there's still an opportunity for him to get drafted with a big season.
Yeah, there's still an opportunity. However, at a position that's already devalued in the league and it's starting to come back, guys, they typically don't want to pay a 28-year-old running back. And now you're saying draft one high that's going to be 27 during the season. So that kind of goes against the scouting model, if you will, just in terms of that running back position.
And we've seen time and time again where running backs don't get drafted, come in, make a team, and are contributors for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years. So there's more than one way to get to the NFL. It's just the position you play is already complicated, and then the fact that you're going to be 26 in February complicates it even more. So fingers crossed, hopefully Rahsul has a big season and helps out our guy Lenore Sellers, and he can parlay that into hearing his name called in 246 days. Maybe 247 or 48 days, depending on when he gets drafted. But just a guy that I'm going to be watching. I'm excited to watch. All right, let's take another break here, Ray. And when we come back, Got to go to Clemson. You got a guy you want to talk about? I'm going to go to LSU. Two teams with a ton of players. We'll tell you which ones we're excited to see right after this break. All right, Ran, let's continue our conversation about the players we are most excited to see in this college football season of 2025. And as I continue to unveil your names here, it's clear to me you want to win the graphic war 12 months from now because you're just taking guys that are going to be top 5 picks. Caleb Downs, big limb there. Fernando Mendoza might be the biggest limb so far. Look at that. Producer Ron hit me with the eyeballs. And now you're going to go with Clemson defensive lineman Peter Woods. We've talked about him over summer scouting. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, non-quarterback, he's the number 1 player on the unofficial Ran big board, and he's top 5 on mine. Mine will come out next week, and we'll see where I end up putting him. But I don't know where the flaws are. I had a scout tell me once talking about Quentin Williams, there doesn't have to be something wrong with the player, and it feels like Peter Woods checks a lot of boxes.
Well, he's actually number 2 on the big board. Caleb is 1. Hence why the thing said your favorite. These guys are my favorite. And so, but no, man, Peter Woods, he has everything. This guy was an easy eval. He's violent. He has violent hands. He's a power player. He can recreate the line of scrimmage. Not necessarily a big sack guy, just in terms of getting the quarterback on the ground, but he makes an impact on the game. And he's one, man, I really want to dig into a little bit just to see where he played in high school, because when you watch his tape and you look at him play on the edge, he at the early part of the season, he almost looked more natural as an edge defender than he did inside. So just excited to see where his game has evolved. And like I said, man, this guy was a ton of fun to watch. And this Clemson team won't have very many excuses this year. I'll say that.
Right. No, that's right. I'm looking at his bio on his Clemson profile right now. He finished his high school career with 29 and a half sacks. His senior season of high school, 90 tackles, 23 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, despite being double teamed the entire season. Not just a series or two. Literally from September until November, he was double teamed, walking down the hallways, going to lunch, and he still managed those numbers. So I get it. And I appreciate you for – you followed the instructions. You were asked to name your favorite players. You did that. You just taking layups, but that's another point.
Hey, your producer Sharon, Ryan wants to be the I told you so guy.
That's all I got. That's all I got. Right. I'm in the back of the room saying, I told you so. All right. My guy that I'm excited to watch, I'm going to go down to Baton Rouge. Wide receiver Nic Anderson transferred from Oklahoma, did not play. I think he had 1 target in 2024 because of a thigh injury that kept him out the entirety of the season except for that 1 target. But in 2023, as a freshman for the Sooners, 65 targets, 810 yards, 10 touchdowns. He did have 6 drops, so the focus drops are a thing that you want to see cleaned up. But again, he also was a freshman. He's unofficially 6'4". He's going to be a big target, figuratively and literally, for our guy Garrett Nussmeier. And I think he has an opportunity to go from what I feel like is a day 2 possibility right now into that first round conversation as maybe it's just me, maybe it's 1 year to the next, but it feels like the wide receiver classes continue to evolve. And sometimes we have the guys who are 6'2" and taller. Then we sort of circle back to the guys that are 5'10", 5'11", like the Jordan Addisons. And then this group feels a little bit bigger in terms of physical size and presence. And we'll see how these guys sort themselves out. Before we take a break here and continue the conversation, I want to go back and ask you something about Peter Woods, because we were talking about Mazi Smith, the former first-round pick, who is struggling to find his way in Dallas now in year 3, I believe. I saw a headline, and whether he might is he going to make the team or not, question mark, and I don't know where the Cowboys are on that. But that's another example for me, a squinter. Like, you have to squint to see what Mazi can do. The physical tools jumped off the page when they were there. Peter feels like there's no squinting involved. What you see is what you get. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the guys that the first 5 snaps you notice that he's a red player because he's impacting the game, immediately. So that was a pretty easy one.
Okay, because I think I'm gonna, in addition to don't overthink it, I think I have my squinters and my non-squinters, guys. We had to squint to see the future, and guys that are like, there's no squinting involved with Peter. Nic Anderson's a little squinting involved because he didn't play last year. And now you're transferring to a new program. You have a new quarterback. Our guy John Mateer probably would have loved to have Nic Anderson stay in Oklahoma, but that didn't happen for him. So when you know a player who has the potential that an Anderson does, 10 touchdowns as a rookie, I think that set the Sooner rookie record as a freshman, going to a new program with a Garrett Nussmeier, who we've talked a ton about as a first-round pick, and coming off that injury, what do you want to see? He may be rusty early on because he hasn't played a lot of football, but by the time we get to October, early November, what should Nic Anderson be looking like as a top 32 prospect?
I mean, he should be in form, by then. And LSU, and shout out to their receiver coach, Cortez Hankton. He's done a great job in terms of molding these receivers. And there's an argument for LSU to now be wide receiver U. And so he's just going to be another guy in the long list of guys that have come through that program that are going to get the proper development. I was going to ask you, just in his body type and his overall play style, like how would you compare him to Keon Coleman?
Interesting. So my comp for Nick was Nico Collins, because Nico got better once he got to the NFL. So similar to body type. I think Nico might be a little longer. You can tell me, you know better than me. I think he's a little twitchier than Keon, and we'll see what that looks like in year 2 for Keon. But Nico compared to Keon, where do you come down on those two players?
I think Keon's just a physical power forward receiver. He's a little faster than people give him credit for, too.
Okay, and Nico can stretch the field. We've seen what Nico has done once he got to Houston. Because did you have any questions about Nico at Michigan? Because I did. I didn't see it consistently, and I wasn't sure where he was going to sort of flesh himself out. What are you laughing at?
I just got a text from B-Mac saying I need to change my shirt. He's a hater. but my question.
Florida State's own B-Mac.
my question was Nico's top end speed, but I think he's answered that now.
Right, and I think if we get any version of a good mix of Keon and Nico, then I think Nic Anderson is well on his way to the first round, because we're having a redraft. Nico Collins is a top 32 pick all day long. Keon obviously went just at the top of the second, I believe, but he certainly has first round talent. Shout out to Florida State alum Keon Coleman and Bryant McFadden, who he just can't quit you. He's jealous. There it is. All right, producer Sharon, Penn State's very own. Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation and see if we can find any more Florida State guys that are worth talking about on this list. Spoiler alert, BMAC, there are none. We'll be back right after this break. All right, Rand, these next two players that we are excited to see could not be more different physically. One is a 210-pound edge rusher, and one is a 330-ish pound defensive lineman. In keeping with true to form, you're repping the Gators and repping guys named Caleb. You're going with Caleb Banks, defensive lineman out of Florida. We talked about him, summer scouting. You turned me on to him, and it just shows you how many good football players there are, that you find a guy that wasn't on your list initially, and you watch him and go, okay, this dude ain't fooling around. So Caleb Banks, I had a day 2 grade on him, like late first, early second. I don't know where you are on that, but tell me what he needs to do to solidify himself among the best defensive linemen in his class. And as we sit here, it ain't a super deep class.
Well, just to kind of go back with the way you ended the last segment to our friend B-Mac, who I know you're watching. You told B-Mac you said, hey, stay tuned to see if we're going to talk about any Florida State guys.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, B-Mac, we're not, but there is a Gator on the list. So go Gators to you, B-Mac. But no, Caleb is going to have to – and one of the reasons why I put him on this list is obviously the kid is extremely talented. I think he's going to be a day 1 pick. However, he's going to have to play and dominate like he did in those last 2 regular season games. And if he plays, particularly if he plays how he played in the LSU game, then yeah, we're talking about a guy that's going to be a top 15, top 20 pick, because it's all there. He's just going to have to show the level of consistency that he hasn't shown so far. He has everything you want to see. His play style to me is comparable to a guy like DeForest Buckner, because you talk about, I just challenge anybody listening, just watch the LSU game. He completely took over that game and dominated that game. And now we just need to see if he could play like that on a weekend and on a week basis. And
again, this, as we sit here, the defensive line class isn't supremely deep. So fair or not, sometimes guys get pushed up, and maybe I know you stack your draft boards and you're not overdrafting guys in the moment, but you might take a guy like Caleb Banks if you have a second round grade on him. If he's there at the bottom of the first, you might take him there. But if he balls out, he might go top 15. just to say crazy things out loud here, assuming everyone stays healthy, there's no way on planet Earth anyone in the defensive line class gets drafted before Peter Woods. You willing to stake that claim?
Hey man, I don't want to put the evaluations into the hands of other people. I know who I would take, but seriously, there will be some D-line coaches that like Caleb Banks more.
Okay. Why is that?
We're talking about the size, we're talking about the length, we're talking about the athleticism, short area of quickness, burst, just overall strength. He has it all in his body. He just has to show that those 2 games where he dominated weren't just flashes in the pan, but that's just who he really is. Whereas Peter Woods has been a more consistent product.
Right. And those are fair points and important points to make, especially as we, people like me say crazy things like, well, there's no way X, Y, or Z anything can happen is what I'm hearing. So that's why you play the games, Ran. All right. My guy, speaking of why you play the games, and I think I'm underthinking it with Suntarine Perkins, edge rusher out of Ole Miss. Because I think you just see the numbers and automatically your brain goes to a place where I can't take this young man seriously as an edge rusher. And that may be fair. I mean, he's 6'1", 210 unofficial, which means he's probably 5'8", 185. I'm exaggerating. But he had 9 sacks last year on that Ole Miss team that was full of guys in that defense that got drafted. Was a linebacker and running back in high school. He ran for over 2,000 yards and 32 touchdowns as a senior. So the athleticism is there. And I'll just read the first line of my notes from watching him over the summer. 6'3", 205. So half a dozen of one in terms of his size and weight. It's not ideal for the edge rush position in the NFL, no doubt about it. But hair on fire, sideline to sideline with a nose for the ball. He looks bigger than whatever he's playing at. Consistently gets off blocks in the run game, usually from 7 or 9 technique, which makes sense. They would occasionally line him up at 3 technique, and he was surprisingly powerful for what appears on paper to be a slight frame. So he's not going in the first round. I love him. I would take him top 50, but I'll ask you, which I'm sure you would ask your scouts, where are we going to play him? He can do everything, but the measurables historically say he is not going to have success in the NFL. So where do we play him at the next level?
I mean, he could ultimately be a DPR for you, a designated pass rusher, a guy that you bring in those sub looks, because, you're playing nickel 60% of the time anyway. You're playing sub defense 60% of the time anyway. So you bring this guy in as just a rusher off the edge on those obvious passing downs, and with a guy like with his motor, his athleticism, he's one of the guys in the D-line room that you could project to playing special teams. And so there will be a role for him, on a team in terms of a designated pass rusher and a core 4 special teams player.
How difficult is it, and I mentioned he played linebacker in high school, how difficult is it to go from edge rush to say, all right, let's make him an off-ball linebacker, or let's make him a strong safety, guy that's hanging around the line of scrimmage, sort of the middle between the hashes mostly, or apex or whatever. How difficult is that? Because we can say all this stuff out loud, but if the player isn't capable of doing it or isn't comfortable with doing it, how long does it take? And is it even something that makes sense when you're having these pre-draft discussions?
Well, I'll tell you this, if you're moving them back, off-ball linebackers where you stop, you're not putting him back in the secondary, regardless of his size. You'll just have to accept that he's an undersized player. And I'm not comping him to this guy, but I played in Indianapolis with an undersized defensive end that was 6 feet, 235, and that was Robert Mathis. And we saw the havoc that he wrecked on the league, and it will be a Hall of Famer here very soon. Not saying that Perkins is that. However, you can play in the right system. You get in a 49ers type system that plays wide 9, those type of defenses that allow you to get off and use your ability. I mean, it's the possibilities are there. I'll just say that.
That said, and that's great news for my stance on Suntarine, but you tell me, forget about edge rush. There's no one that weighed 210 pounds and played edge rush in the NFL. Who's off-ball linebacker that weighed sub 220, maybe unofficially, maybe in the course of the season losing weight? But any guys that come to mind that can do it competently at 6'1" to 6'3" and that weighs 210?
They're a little more than you think. Because
that's good.
These linebackers have progressively gotten smaller. I played with a guy, Cato June, who was a Pro Bowl linebacker. Cato would be heavy during the season, and Cato got as low as 205 playing the season. Quan Alexander was under 220. So there are smaller guys, but those two in particular, they were very instinctive. And so they didn't get caught in a wash because they were able to see things and shoot things. And where Suntarine is going to have to adjust his playing off ball, being able to read his keys and see things naturally. And that's usually takes a little bit to get there.
Right. So there's a lot of projection going on. And this, I think he qualifies as a squinter. Is that fair to say?
Very fair.
Yeah, because you got to figure out. I mean, I love everything he brings, but just finding the right fit. One last thing before we take a break here. You mentioned edge rush at 235 when you were there. Did Bill Polian have a thing for out of the box thinking? Because Bob Sanders wasn't your prototypical safety either, and he was a missile.
No, Bob Sanders was just short. He was 5'8", but he was every bit of 215. Just rocked up, traps and shoulders for days. He was just short.
But again, that goes to a fantastic football player, but that goes to undersized 5'8", maybe struggling to stay healthy. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but just the way his reckless style of play just wasn't, conducive for anybody of any size. Like how you saw Bob play is exactly how he practiced. And as a guy who was running scout team running back, I tried to get my reps, get past the defense, and hurry up and sprint back before Bob could try to take a shot at me.
Would your dad have been impressed with the way Bob Sanders played in the secondary? Because I know he had a low opinion of some defensive backs in terms of their ability to come up and meet the challenge in the hole.
Oh no, he definitely would have respected Bob for sure, no question. Because Bob wasn't turning down anything from linemen, fullbacks, tight ends, whoever.
I don't want to give Bob Sanders career advice, but if he had been more like Ryan Wilson, he might still be playing. Just don't go down. Don't be a hero. All right. Speaking of not being a hero, let's take one more quick break here, and we'll come back and wrap up the final two guys we're most excited to see this college football season. We'll do that right after this break. All right, Rand, down the home stretch here. These players we're most excited to see for this college football season, which is 5 days away. That is also nuts. And going back to the well here, least surprising development of the day, our guy, your guy, Texas running back CJ Baxter, another young man you turned me on to. He wasn't on my radar because he got hurt in preseason going into 2024, so he didn't play at all. But when you go back and watch 2023, that dude has a chance to be special. And so special, in fact, I'll put this on you. Could he be running back 1 or 2, depending on how the season goes for him?
Well, that was when we talked about him in summer scouting, I was like, this is the one guy that can push Jeremiah Love for RB1. I think he has it in his body. The big thing for him is obviously you want to see how he returns off of that devastating injury. He'll have had a full 12 months to recover, because I do believe he has red level talent, and if he can return to top form, he's going to be a top talent. He's a slash and outside zone runner that has vision. He presses the blocks well. He has good speed, good burst, good acceleration. Now, the next big step for him is developing as a pass protector. Like you said, his only tape that we have is him as a freshman, and his awareness in pass pro looked like a freshman who had never been asked to pass pro before, which you expect. But you talk about a ton of talent. You just want to see how he returns, off of that injury. And like I said, he's had a full 12 months to recover. And another kid from Florida, the Orlando area. So there we go. Another Florida boy.
I'm taking Central Florida now. That's how it is. By the way, in 2023, only had 1 fumble on 144 carries, 26 targets, 0 drops as a receiver. And he was the first true freshman to start and open for UT since Ricky Williams back in 1995. So clearly they knew he was a dude before he got hurt, and now he and Arch will be out there in the backfield together. So that's going to be a fun watch.
Hold on, real quick. You saying that he was the first true freshman to start since Ricky Williams, but think about the 3 backs that have come behind him that have all been drafted, and they thought enough of him to play him over there. So there you go. I don't know if it was 2 or 3, but it was definitely 2 guys that got drafted that were his backups essentially.
Yeah, Bijan, Roshan and Bijan played together. And then Jonathan, whose last name I always forget, and I apologize, he was drafted by the Carolina Panthers and re-injured his knee as well after tearing his ACL coming out for the final his final year at Texas. Quickly on Arch. Arch refuted his grandfather's comments about Arch's coming back to school. He goes, I don't know where he got that from. If you're a GM, does that perk your ears up, or I say, I'll just wait. I'm not going to worry about this right now.
It doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
Granddaddies are doing granddaddy things. They're just having conversations with people and just saying the thing that comes to their mind.
But for Arch, so when Arch says, I don't know what that means, do you think there's a chance Arch might come out now?
I think if the right scenario presents itself, I mean, that's kind of what the Manning family has been about. What's been the best scenario? And if it's the best scenario, I'm sure if he plays to the level that he feels he'll be the number one pick, then if it's a right scenario. But if not, he has no incentive to leave. Crank up the NIL money.
Yeah, because if anything, the Mannings need is more money. I'm praying for them as well. Crank up the Ryan Wilson NIL money. Got a kid in college. His name ain't Arch Manning either, by the way. So I'm paying him full. But that's a conversation for another time. Go get my fund me going. All right, my guy. Back to reality here. The realization that I'm deeply in debt. My guy, and I thought he might come out this last draft cycle. He returned to school. Safety Kamari Ramsey. I got some Jalen Petrie vibes when I watched him play last fall. We didn't talk about him over the summer, but he has a chance to be day 2 pick all day long. And when I watched him back in the fall, long fluid mover who will come down hill and pop you in the mouth. No stiffness in his movements in terms of ability to flip his hips and go sideline to sideline, plays with good instincts. IDs like the screen passes in front of him quickly and comes down hill and makes wrap-up tackles. And he consistently is blowing up plays at the line of scrimmage, both inside the tackle box and then, of course, near the sidelines here. So Kamari Lassiter, another safety that's going to be in this conversation, Ran. I don't know if you had a chance to see him, but just based on what you heard, what do you want to see in general terms from a safety to take himself from a top 100 pick to maybe get inside the top 50?
No, I mean, I did watch him. And so I saw him as a rock and roll safety. I think he can play, in the post and in the box, but I liked him a little bit more, in the box. And like you mentioned, he had played some nickel, but truthfully, I didn't see a top flight NFL nickel athlete, but I think he'll be a really good third safety, if he were to come out, and then he'd give you that versatility, that flexibility to play him, in multiple spots as your third safety.
Unofficially 6 feet, 205. We'll see where that ends up. He looked a little lighter than that when I watched him, but that means absolutely nothing. Just with the impression I got watching him play. Does he feel like a day 2 guy to you, or are we looking, when you give the job description that you just laid out there, does that mean something maybe a little later for now?
No, definitely day 2. And of the safeties I've seen, I'm looking at my list right now. I have him as number 2. But I think there's a huge gap between 1 and the rest of the bunch.
Yep. Caleb Downs, safety 1. Kamari Ramsey's my safety 2. And I'll just throw some names out at you here. Jelani McDonald out of Texas is a guy that we didn't talk about, but I watched him this summer. Liked his game a lot. Dylan Thieneman, Oregon. You and I talked about him offline. We'll get to him as the season progresses. He's gotten a lot of buzz. Peyton Bowen out of Oklahoma as well. Keon Saab out of Alabama. All safeties to keep an eye on this draft cycle. For now, though, Ran, that's it. Our 10 players that we are most excited to see in the 2025 NFL college season, which starts in 5 days. Cannot wait for it. In the meantime, as always, check out With First Pick wherever you get your podcast. Scan that QR code. Leave us a 5-star review, and we will catch you guys in the next one.